Good evening, Earth. This is Adam Sturch broadcasting from the Mushroom Mansion, Taos, Mexico, working on oil painting alchemical light. Alright, for the moment, I'm just going to go up and hit this tree with a little detail and some foliage. Got some light green, some pale green, and lemon yellow out for greening up the leaves.
And of course, that's what archaeology is about.
And a variety of brown, stark brown, and a little white for the trunk.
Into our past,
and
but
some
also
yellow
into our future, because of the implications. Like it's like time travel into our past, but really the importance is for our future. Yes.
You speak about how the two things of homosexuality for men, given the history in many different societies where the initiation rites were so painful that many would choose to be another man's second wife or would not go through into being initiated into a man because of the dominator society history. Homosexuality.
Why don't you say it yourself more loudly, because I don't want to go
I'm just curious about the choices that men have made into homosexuality because of dominating societies and them not being able to express themselves in a feminine way, having a relationship with the goddess, perhaps. And also in history, how different tribal societies, the initiation rites were so painful that oftentimes, like in Native American societies and in Africa, in different places, they would choose to be a man's second wife rather than be initiated into this domineering, controlling, all-powerful male in the society. And I just wonder how that relates to homosexuality in society today and to AIDS.
Wow, that's a 4-hour question. But I'm going to try to answer a big part of it. I think clearly, just as we have completely distorted heterosexual sexuality into either calling it sinful and something that you only do for one reason, folks, and that's to impregnate a woman, right? I mean, not for pleasure, not for bonding. How that puts a barrier to communication. Because of course, lack of communication is the sine qua non. It's the stuff of which dominated society is made. So all of the institutions are designed to prevent it or to equate what we've done. We see it so much in the modern pornography industry, which is again a resurgence really of dominator models, the erotization of dominance, right? So heterosexuality has been completely distorted by the dominator model. We're trying to reclaim it. Homosexuality equally so. And the example, and you have really, by giving the examples that you did, have pointed out some of the ways in which men have been pushed into it in some tribes. But, of course, as Genet, the French writer pointed out, the classical, if you will, the traditional homosexual relationship is a parody. It's a caricature, an exaggerated caricature of the male-female dominant subservience, the sadomasochistic relationship that is supposed to characterize, the male-female relationship. And what I want to suggest to you is that the misogyny, that is part of the culture, and it's not only part of the homosexual community, it's part of the whole dominator system. All of these things interweave in a complex way to make us confuse sex, which is an act of giving pleasure and taking pleasure, with an act of giving pain and receiving pain. I mean, it's an amazing thing. And the thing I want to end with is the Greeks. Now, classical Greece was a hybrid society. I have a chapter in the Chalices of Life on the Greeks. And I've had some very, very interesting feedback from classical scholars who have said, wow, that really, the archaeological data and bringing it together this way really explains a lot of what was happening there. But consider homosexuality in Greece. Of course, this so-called cradle of democracy, where women lost their votes. Did you know, I have to check this, I have to digress. St. Augustine tells a story, which is a wonderful clue. He says that the way that Athens got its name was that there was this contest where they were going to either name it after the, Pluto, the god of the underground, the male god of the underground, or Athena, who I think, of course, is a direct descendant of the goddess, except she now has become this insane combination of the goddess of wisdom and war, which, only the dominator system can do that, but that's okay. And apparently the women and there was one more woman. They voted for a female. So in punishment, now listen, in punishment, St. Augustine believes that women lost the right to vote. And we're told that Athens is the cradle of democracy. And of course that's very interesting because half the population in Athens were women, right? And they were literally under house arrest. I mean, the apartheid was so great, they were segregated into the women's quarters. And 90% of both men and women were slaves. So we have this, very free society, right, which is sort of a joke. But it's a hybrid society between some of the earlier, the Minoan, very definitely. I mean, as Clayton points out, the Minoan tradition flourished still, in the beautiful art, and in many of, but we don't have time for the whole thing. But the thing that I wanted to tell you was about homosexuality, which is so fascinating. The accepted norm for homosexuality, and the only way it was tolerated, was if it was between an older man. Yes.
Terence mentioned this idea of a northern peoples mounting on horses and coming back and dominating the cradle culture. Could you talk about the fact that these people were essentially the sons of those that had been exiled from those cultures in the first place? Because no one leaves the cradle culture voluntarily. Somehow they didn't conform, or there was something in their psychology that they couldn't cooperate, and they were sent away. And they went to northern areas. They had a hardened. Their survival qualities were much more difficult, and that created a different psychology. And when they found a vehicle, they came back and essentially destroyed the culture that had at some point earlier rejected them, thrown them out. And that's always like the return of the prodigal in this kind of
Well, that's a very interesting theory that you propose. Unfortunately, I don't have any data. See, it's very difficult. I mean, we can hypothesize on what happened and how it happened. But the hard data just isn't there yet. The hard data that we have is what happened when they came in. That we are beginning to acquire. And I think with time we'll also get more and more clues. But I think you have been spinning some very interesting theories there. Yes?
History protection on constant discrimination between group partnering and partnering that is fostered by the dominant society to gain economic profit. Can I go back to the Scandinavian countries worked and worked on years ago? I think we looked at product, but without any sense of being threatened by it. The Japanese do the same thing, and now it's a key element of the investment complex to duplicate them because we're threatened by them economically.
Well, again, that's a very interesting question, especially the Japanese phenomenon, which is such a mix of the really very paternalistic and very dominator, and yet a basic partnership understanding. And I don't even know how to begin to answer that, except to say that we have to be very careful with the terms that we're trying to reclaim. I mean, I'm trying to reclaim for us the term partnership. And you're quite right. We need to make distinctions between the way that it's been used, conventionally. And also, look, we want to reclaim terms like family and tradition. But these traditions are much, much older, okay? And they lasted for much, much longer. So, I mean, this is part of our reclamation work. About the second part of what you're saying, which is the issue of economic competition, the dominator system artificially creates scarcity. And that's an area that I explore in some of the later chapters of The Tellers and the Blade, but I think it's something that we really need to understand very, very clearly. See, all of these things are tremendous opportunities for work, tremendous amount of research. Once we see that there is what the dynamics are of the dominator system, then we can begin to also create the alternatives and to come out of it. So I would have to leave it, in these very general terms. Yes, David. This, by the way, I did introduce David, and that's David.
I'm both a social psychologist and I'm a refugee from the business world. And from the viewpoint of social psychology, there was work by one of the great geniuses of the Stanford was Kurt Lewin in studying participatory work within the work context. Group discussion. I mean, instead of the hierarchical thing, the leader tells the workers what to do. The workers gather together and discuss, and with the leaders and so on, and they come up with a consensus, and we found the power of that work. And that went into a lot of literature that went to the corporate world. There were a lot of training groups, a lot of consultants made their livings for many years. Going into the corporate world, they were hired by the hierarchy to go in there and, in a sense, build the illusion in the corporate world that we're all teams. Boy, you've got a say in this, you've got to avoid the decision of where we're going and so on. But unfortunately, everybody knew, including the consultants themselves, that it was a sham. Because when you really got down to the core of it, it was still Mr. Big calling the shot, and you got fired and hired. No 60-day notice for a plant closing, it's just one. Overnight, the whole partnership thing could be thrown out. The interesting that's happening, you mentioned Japanese, the interesting thing that's happening now is because the Japanese have this system that on one point has a lot of hierarchy, but also has a lot of this teamwork stuff and agenda. Because that system is now present. Economically goes deeply. At last, the corporate world is being forced beyond. The consultants now they go out there and sell in what amounts to the partnership way of thinking in the corporate world with some hope that it may catch on simply because the people up there and the people that invest in all this industry are really scared. They can see they're going down the drain unless they become true, unless they really make this partnership thing work. That's why it's very, very exciting in the business.
Respond just a little further to the balance, and to respond to your initial question. To respond to your initial question, I think there might be just a slight, well, not danger maybe, but a problem in, where there would be a difference between a true partnership type of society which goes on and is economically sound for itself and doesn't seek to exploit another party, a bunch of people, for that type of economic.
All right.
And now it might be just a little insidious if the typically male-dominant
I decide if I can work on another segment of this or just have this be a short session this evening. It's been a little while modeling and placing the eagle in the other painting, and I think this might be it for the moment. Let this dry before I continue.
Into a domineering society and just use those.
But as you can see, that gives that tree a little bit of depth, character, and shadow. Whoa. Power is
not
flipped.
fortunate if that were to happen.
Okay.
So you brought up the whole problem of co-option.
All right, so yeah, I think I'm going to call it quits right here on this one for the moment. Just a short session for this tonight, and get back to it after I get the bird's eye nailed down, which will probably be tomorrow. So thank you for watching. Have a good evening, Earth. That's Adam Sturch broadcasting from the Mushroom Mansion, Taos, New Mexico. Working on oil painting alchemical light. Working on the greening portion of it.
And so that, our main task is, well, it's not our main task. We have to do everything. People say, what do we have to do? The answer is everything. We certainly have to work on ourselves a great deal.
Still a ways to go on this one, but I'm liking the way it's developing, so I don't want to rush it. Let's see if I can get a little more centered than that. That's pretty good. Okay. All right. Have a good night.